Hi, this is Magda from Interiors Exteriors. In this episode, I'll show you our family garden near Warsaw and the Yuka mowing robot from Mammotion, which makes it possible to start relaxing right away when you come here for the weekend, instead of having to start by mowing the lawn. If you're only interested in the mower, skip ahead a bit, because first I'd like to tell you about the history of this place. My parents bought this recreational plot a long time ago when I was still a child, but at first not much was happening here because there were huge thickets, it was hard to even get in, and the plot had to wait a bit until my parents had more time to really take care of it. The early years involved intensive cleaning and clearing. You can imagine for yourselves how hard it is to turn a plot completely overgrown with thickets into such a neat little lawn. And only after a few years, when the plot actually started to look like a garden, my parents decided that it would be nice to have a little house here too, so they could stay longer. And of course that's a very good idea, but as you can probably guess, building the house, preparing everything, and finishing it is also an adventure that can easily take a few years if you want to do everything exactly the way you want. Building the house also meant that the garden had to be reorganized because the original plans were a bit different and assumed the house would be in a different place than where it was eventually built. So once again, some plants had to be moved, various plans had to be changed, and some of the work simply had to be done all over again. And although it's hard to say that the garden is finished now, especially since many plants are still waiting to reach their proper size, and above all, gardens always require endless care, this story never really ends. The biggest, maybe the hardest jobs are already behind us. On the side facing the road, a strip of greenery was created, which is very diverse. There are both small flowers and trees, and there's also a climbing plant on the fence. So when everything grows, it will simply form a green wall that will provide more privacy. In this part, you can clearly see the different stages of the garden's development. Just as I showed you earlier the strip that was created a long time ago, here it's only recently been covered with bark, here it will be extended, and here there are still individual plants simply planted with grass around them. Such places can be the biggest challenge for robotic lawnmowers because they have to go around each of these obstacles. So the more of these individual bushes there are on the lawn, the longer mowing will simply take. In this part here, in the back of the garden, there also won't be a lawn in the future, but while all these plants are still small, it's nice to have a bit of greenery between them. Greenery clearly separated from the lawn is convenient not only for regular mowing, but also for a robotic mower, which can then keep a safe distance from the bushes and precisely mow the entire lawn, even right up to the edge. And this rowan tree not only looks beautiful, but also elegantly hides the compost bins that are located here at the end of the plot. Right next to it, there is a wooden structure to which the vegetables are tied. See, it's not only practical, but also very aesthetic, because these wooden pieces beautifully separate this space and it looks extremely elegant. The plot is, of course, not only about decorative plants, but also fruits and vegetables, and here, mainly fruits. And this strawberry bed, although not only strawberries, is located behind the house, and you can already see that the strawberries have started to bloom. And now we are in front of the house, where there is mainly a terrace and more decorative shrubs, and behind me you can also see a pergola. It will take a little longer before it turns green, but it already looks beautiful. The whole plot is about 1,000 square meters, but of course the lawn doesn't cover the entire area. As you saw, it's heavily interspersed with various plants, so the lawnmower really has a tough job here. Now you already know the history of this garden, but before I tell you more about the lawnmower, you should also get to know its history, because this new Juke has a predecessor. As you can see, here is her older sister. It was very important to my dad to find a lawnmower that would not only mow by itself, but would also collect the cut grass. Because if the device mows by itself, but we still have to go over the whole yard with a rake, it's not that satisfying, and it's definitely nicer when the device can do it for us. The second very important criterion was the ability to navigate without a cable, so that nothing would have to be buried in different parts of the garden, especially since the garden is still evolving. And you would have to move that cable from time to time, and obviously that wouldn't be convenient. Yuka definitely handles this much better, and I'll show you how in a moment. That's why my dad bought a Yuka lawnmower with a grass catcher a long time ago, and it's been working great here for quite some time. Recently, the company Mammotion reached out to me with a proposal to test their latest model, and that's how two Yukas ended up on the same property. Both models look very similar, but there are key differences between them that affect how the lawnmower works. First of all, the software in the new one makes it drive much more precisely. And secondly, the new lawnmower has more blades. Not 6, but 10. Now let's focus on the newest model and start from the beginning, which is the unboxing. How complicated is it to get the lawnmower ready to use? It's definitely very simple. There's a pictorial manual, and there really aren't that many parts to assemble because you just need to prepare the basket, tighten a few screws, assemble the charging station and the antenna. It's all simple, and the set comes with a screwdriver that fits the individual parts, so you don't even need to have any of your own tools. The basket hangs loosely. It's hooked on but not fastened. This is just how it's mounted, and when the grass is being emptied, it's lifted in this way. But assembling the mower and the individual accessories is only half of getting the mower ready to mow, because now you also have to set everything up in the app. And you need to plan the zones where the mower can mow, as well as those it shouldn't enter. To do this, you need to drive the mower along the borders of each zone, and you do this manually. It's best to just walk behind it, controlling it with the app as if you were driving a remote-controlled car, so it's not particularly complicated. Everyone can handle this easily, and thanks to that, the mower will actually reach exactly where it should and not where it shouldn't. Because even though the mower has various obstacle detection systems, both this artificial intelligence camera and mechanical detection methods, the housing here is slightly flexible, and in the app you can also set how sensitive it should be to different obstacles. As we know, it's still just a device that can make mistakes. That's why the safest way is to simply mark everything clearly on the map. Yuka also offers an automatic mapping option, but manual mapping is definitely more precise, and that's what I recommend to you. When creating an area, we don't have to be super precise, because you can always add or remove a spot later on. For example, here along the edge, bark will still be spread, so this zone will be excluded anyway, and that's why I'm not going around it. These plants, on the other hand, will be excluded from the zone later, only after creating this outer area. It's hard for me to talk to you about this and control it at the same time. There should be a distance of about 6 inches from the bushes, especially since when the mower has this container and is turning, it might simply hit the bush, so sometimes it's better to leave even a slightly bigger distance. But here I'll go relatively close because of the bushes on the other side, so that after leaving some distance from them and from the little tree, there will still be a wide enough corridor for the mower in the future. And it's similar here in front of us, where there's a kind of little fence, let's say, by this bark. We don't want the mower to catch on this material that's been laid out, so there's no even surface here where you could drive the mower with one wheel on this bark, and then it would cut the grass perfectly up to the edge. As long as there's an uneven surface here, we avoid the unevenness, and that's why we need to leave a certain gap. Let's see if this gap will be enough. I hope so. I'm coming in slowly, and I hope it'll be fine. Keep your fingers crossed. The zones in general should be next to each other like a puzzle covering the whole plot, but as you can see, if you overlap one zone a bit onto another, it doesn't cause any harm at all. It will also make it easier for the mower to move between the zones, so that's absolutely fine. If we make a mistake, we can edit, start over, or delete and try again. No problem. However, this is the biggest amount of work that really needs to be done to prepare the mower for mowing. And then we just control it. Of course, many of the mower's functions are controlled through the app, but there's also a panel here where we can set the cutting height. The most important button is the stop button, so if something happens quickly without thinking, you can just turn it off. And here are a few more buttons. In this place, however, is the connection for the grass container. When it's full, the mower goes to the spot where it's supposed to dump the grass, and then the container lifts up and empties the grass. That's why it needs to be connected to the battery, because otherwise the container wouldn't be able to lift. For the mower to move properly around the yard, it connects to an antenna, which is separate, and it's recommended to place it in an open area so nothing interferes with the signal transmission. The antenna is connected to the house's Wi-Fi and needs to be plugged into power, so the options for where to place it are quite limited. Now it's placed here, so it's not an ideal spot. It's partially sheltered, but it still works very well. However, eventually it will be swapped with the antenna from the previous mower, which is by the roof, and that spot works great. Here in the garden, it doesn't get in the way at all, and it's completely exposed, so everything works very well. I've seen questions online about whether the mower needs to connect to Wi-Fi, because if the garden is large and the Wi-Fi is in the house, the signal might not necessarily reach the edges of the property. And the mower doesn't have to connect to Wi-Fi. It works better when it actually is connected to Wi-Fi, but it has a built-in SIM card inside, so it will also connect when it goes out of Wi-Fi range. And take a look at what the mower looks like from underneath. These are the blades. This part spins and the blades go around, cutting the grass evenly. And here is the part that collects the grass into the container, which I have now detached. And thanks to the fact that this spins and combs through the grass so thoroughly, you can get very elegant, nice stripes on your lawn. You can see that in the app, we go into the map and mark the areas we want to mow, and then we have the settings option. And here are various things I've already mentioned to you. We can even adjust the cutting angle to have stripes in the direction that will look best on our property. We decide how often, after how many meters the basket should be emptied, because if the grass is taller, we can predict that it's better for the basket to be emptied more frequently. Among the interesting options, for example, is obstacle detection, which is currently set to sensitive, and it's really sensitive to the point that sometimes if there's no grass in a spot because a mole made a mound, or even if there's sharp sunlight and a dark shadow falls, the mower might think it's an obstacle. That's why this sensitivity is so high. When it's turned off, it doesn't pay any attention to obstacles at all. It's just ready to hit them and then go around. So the standard setting is somewhere in between. We decide for ourselves which mode we prefer. There's also an interesting option with work progress. For example, if we previously mowed 40% now in this zone, we can set the mower to start from 40% because, for instance, it started to rain and the mower stopped working. It doesn't have to start over. Since we haven't changed any major settings, it will have the same route. And by setting the same work progress, it will simply continue where it actually hasn't mowed yet. And finally, I'll show you this function, because I talked a lot about lines, but you can also make a grid. So the possibilities for arranging the grass so that the lawn looks perfect are really huge. The mower is running, and as you can hear, it's not very loud. When they're mowing the lawn near my apartment, sometimes it's impossible to work with the windows open because it's so loud. This one is more like, well, I don't know, when it gets closer, you'll probably hear for yourself that you can definitely tell it's working, but it's not that bothersome. You can actually have a conversation while it's running. I would also compare it a bit to automatic vacuum cleaners. They also, of course, make noise. You can hear them in the apartment, but they're not as loud as those really powerful vacuum cleaners, especially the old ones I still remember from my childhood, or like construction vacuum cleaners. They also howl so much that you can't do anything. Here, there's a sound, yes, of a working machine, but it's still relatively quiet. The closer I get, the louder it is, but just a few steps away it's really fine. And when it moves to the other side, you can sit here on the terrace and forget that mowing is even happening. Now the mower has gone to empty the basket, which is already filled with grass. So it's a good moment to remind you that Yuka not only mows, not only collects grass, but can also collect leaves. It can mow and collect, or it can simply drive over a lawn that has already been mowed to collect the fallen leaves. We don't have to rake. That's another thing Yuka can do for us. A perfect, beautiful lawn without all the effort required by traditional mowers is absolutely possible. That's why I highly recommend the Yuka mower from Mammotion. Of course, you'll find the link in the video description. Now, I encourage you to give a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I'm looking forward to your comments. And let me remind you that although you associate wnetrzazewnetrza mainly with interiors, we also have a really great garden series on the channel where we show both smaller gardens and really large ones run by amateurs as well as professional gardeners. That's why there's no shortage of inspiration. Be sure to watch, and now I have to say goodbye. See you next time. Thank you.